It's a type of blue-green algae. Microcystis aeruginosa produces a toxin called microcystin, and microcystin is a liver toxin, so that's why it's a concern for public health. It can also have other effects that are more immediate, like nausea, diarrhea, rashes, other gastric problems and things like that.
We were concerned that there were people recreating on in the reservoirs. There were children in the reservoirs. There was water skiing, so there was direct ingestion and recreation. And we felt from our quick review and our consultation with our national experts that there was potentially a significant health risk, and we should put out some sort of advisory.
In July 2006, samples from Iron Gate Reservoir had the highest levels of microcystin recorded in the United States. Some sample sites exceeded the World Health Organization guidelines by 4,000-fold. Water quality officials consider children to be at the greatest risk of exposure since it takes a lower dose of the toxin to make them sick, and kids are more prone to accidental ingestion during play. According to Quorum, the reservoirs create the perfect habitat for this deadly organism to thrive.
The Microcystis aeruginosa likes still, warm water that's nutrient-rich, particularly like nutrients like nitrogen. So the reservoirs were providing pretty much the perfect growing conditions. They were large bathtubs in which the algae had a great growing condition.
The toxin was not detectable upstream of Kopko Reservoir, yet high levels of toxin were flowing into the river below Iron Gate Dam. In October 2005, under pressure from tribes and California water quality officials, Pacificor reluctantly provided the results of their sampling studies. Although Pacificor's memo indicated that they had observed dangerous levels of toxic algae since 2001, the company failed to warn communities around the reservoirs and downstream of the risk. Most basin residents are familiar with the 2002 adult fish kill that left 68,000 salmon dead before reaching their spawning grounds. However, what most people don't realize is that today, the majority of juvenile fish in the Klamath are dying of disease. Dams play a prominent role in the spread of these diseases.
Disease is actually taking a pretty significant part of the juvenile population out. Another real important thing to point out is we've looked in some of the major tributaries of the Klamath, the Trinity in particular, and we don't see these infections. It's not until those fish move into the Klamath River that they become infected. And what we have observed is that not only is the infection rate quite high in these groups, but the mortality due to these diseases is quite high, in the neighborhood of 80%. We're talking about large numbers of fish that are dying due to disease.
There are two disease-causing parasites prevalent in the Klamath River, Ceratamixa and Parvicapsula. Together, these organisms make a deadly combination.
Both of these diseases are also temperature dependent to some degree. In the Klamath River, because the temperatures are warmer for most of the year, it means that fish can probably become infected throughout the greater part of the year.
These results suggest a connection between dams and disease. According to biologist Mike Belchek, the dams have a direct impact on water temperatures.
One of the major effects that the Klamath River Hydroelectric Project has to the Klamath River is the effect that it has on temperature. And it's a real profound effect and has big implications for salmon. Because of the dams, now water temperatures stay high, so the disease problem in my opinion, is definitely caused partly by the thermal effects of the dams.
There are very large populations between Iron Gate Dam and the Scott River. That's where we've detected high numbers of parasites by holding sentinel fish, through our water filtration and detection of the parasite in the water. Another habitat where it seems to be found very often and in very high densities are large mats of the algae Cladophora, which kind of look like moss growing on the rocks. It's fairly dense substrate. We're looking at the effects of different flow rates on infection.
Below Iron Gate Dam, for juvenile fish, it's a death zone. The algae mats and the nutrient load, it's not being flushed out. The river is not being turned over below Iron Gate. primarily those fish diseases are related to poor water quality and low water, and the fact that dams are blocking the fish's migration, and the fish have to concentrate below the dam, so it creates kind of a vector for disease. You know, and certainly if those dams weren't there, those fish would have a place to go. You wouldn't have concentrations of salmon spawning below the dams.
It'd be like us being next to coughing people in a hospital for a month. Our chances of getting sick go way up.
Given that dams and diversions have had a significant impact on the river for the past 100 years, many are concerned that suitable salmon habitat no longer exists above the dams. However, according to fishermen and biologists, salmon habitat still remains intact.
We had 4 salmon experts from the Columbia River system come down, and we asked them to tell us straight up which parts of the system will take salmon, which parts won't, and whether they think that reintroduction of salmon under present conditions is a reasonable thing to attempt. We had these 4 professionals come, they toured around, they saw things they liked, they saw things they didn't like, and at the end of the day they said, well, it looks to us like it's reasonable to attempt reintroduction under present conditions to the Williamson and the Wood River systems. Those are both dominated by spring water flows that just pop up out of the ground with, you know, with a really large amount of flow. And it's nice and cold and clear and clean, and there's good spawning areas.
The Wood and the Williamson are unique to Oregon in that these are some of the largest fish in the country. The Williamson, in fact, has the largest red band trout in the world.
You know what, right now there's trophy, red band, there's salmonid species. Some potential that because they're cut off for ocean access that they may be genetically similar to anadromous, but there are rainbow trout that move in and out, that find refugia, that grow to trophy sizes. Tells me there's habitat there and fish can find it.
Dam removal projects in nearby watersheds and around the world demonstrate that salmon can indeed repopulate historic habitat when given the opportunity.
An example of a positive response to dam removal has been the removal of a number of small dams on Butte Creek in the Sacramento Valley. This is a major spring-run Chinook spawning stream. And once the dams were removed, the numbers of salmon moving up the creek increased dramatically. And it's now one of the major holding areas for spring-run Chinook in the Sacramento Basin.
Downriver communities are concerned that dam removal would increase the risk of flooding. However, these dams were built to create hydropower electricity, not to act as flood control. The last Klamath Dam, Iron Gate, was completed in 1962. In 1964, the area experienced the worst flooding in recorded history. Again, in 2006, floodwaters threatened local communities. When local supervisor Marcia Armstrong asked Pacificor why their dams did not appear to help with this problem, they responded by saying that the system of dams on the Klamath River has very little flood control value. Upriver, communities worry that dam removal will impact irrigation deliveries.
The dams are not used for irrigation. We have 2 dams that are critical to the project, Link River Dam and Keno Dam, and those are not considered to be big dams.
However, irrigators' support for dam removal is contingent on 3 things.
If we're assured that we've got affordable, reliable power, some dependability on the water deliveries to agriculture, you know, it's not a year-to-year guessing game. Whether it's fish passage at the dams or dam removal, we have a potential for salmon here in the upper basin that haven't been here for a long, long time. So we're looking for some kind of a safe harbor, or, you know, we want to provide additional habitat, help the species, but we don't want to get penalized for doing it. If we can address these 3 things, we don't have a problem with putting dams on the table and negotiating with the power company about, can we get them out, can we get some of them out, can we get all of them out?
I guess my vision of how all this could work together you know, it would be farms and fish. And if that means fish passage all the way to the headwaters of the Williamson, fine. But don't put the ESA burden on us when we have salmon in our backyard. We can welcome them home with open arms, but we need to be held harmless from those fish being in our backyards.
Tribes and their allies are working to address the farmers' and ranchers' concerns.
The tribes can work with the farming community. We can have dam removal, we can have affordable power rates, we can have water certainty, and we can have safe harbor agreements that protect irrigation interests from future conservation or other needs. We need to take care of fish. Our priority is to take care of fish now. Taking the dams out does that. And we need to work with the farming community to identify water flow needs for fish on the long term and take care of water flow needs for irrigation on the long term as well.
My job as a fisheries biologist for the tribe is certainly to help provide a sustainable resource in fish. And that means not having fish on the endangered species list, meaning having a harvestable surplus of salmon. You know, I think that we can take actions right now to prevent future listings. And one of those actions, the primary action, is to get rid of some dams and reservoirs.
Outside the basin, PacifiCorp's ratepayers are following the dam relicensing process closely, as they fear that dam removal could mean a loss of power and result in higher power bills.
These 4 dams in particular have a rated capacity of roughly 161 megawatts. For a sense of scale, the demand for the state of California is roughly 55,000 megawatts. Relatively small piece of the total. In order to achieve getting a new license, it is expected that PacifiCorp will have to come up to modern standards as to what a facility should look like and how it should operate, not the standards that existed 85 years ago or even 50 years ago, but rather as they exist today. And that will cost a considerable amount of money.
From a market efficiency perspective, if the cost of continued operations, which might include fish ladders, might include other provisions for wildlife or fish on the Klamath River, become greater than the current cost of dam removal and lost services, then it might make sense for PacifiCorp to choose not to renew the license.
In May 2006, federal agencies issued their mandatory terms and conditions for a license renewal. These terms and conditions include the construction of fish ladders and increased river flows. Agency experts estimate that this will cost PacifiCorp's ratepayers nearly $200 million. The estimate for simply removing the dams? $100 million. Given the difficulty of working with PacifiCorp over the years, communities within the basin now seek energy independence.
80% of the Yurok Reservation is without electricity. We have schools that are without electricity. We have homes without electricity. Our school kids go and have to study by candlelight, by kerosene light.
We're asked to pay the price for this, they call it, progress. I don't think this is progress by any standards.
I want to get energy independence. We have 300 days of sunshine a year here. The wind blows here. We got geothermal heat here. We have some real opportunities with renewable power, I think. I even think we might be able to get to a place where we can grow crops that provide power or fuel.
Dam removal would be a massive project for the construction industry and would provide a significant boost to local economies. $100 million spent on dam removal could create as many as 2,150 jobs. Most of this benefit would be in Siskiyou County, California, and Klamath County, Oregon. Over the long term, the restored fishery would increase recreation and provide new tourism-related jobs. In addition to regional economic benefits, the improved water quality that would result from river restoration would yield a direct benefit to landowners.
Property owners, in turn, then find themselves in a situation where they could go from having property on a lake that has known water quality problems, ranging from just poor water quality to actual toxic issues, complete with signs up around some of these reservoirs saying that there's a toxic problem with the water quality. They go from a situation of that to one where they could be adjoining a nice, clean, restored water body. And in some of the projects that I have looked at, where I've looked at actual real estate transactions before, years before the dam, and then years after the dam was gone, real estate values have gone up in some cases as much as tenfold, 1,000% increase in property values.
With the relicensing of the dams, the fate of Klamath communities hangs in the balance. Can the diverse stakeholders of the basin forge meaningful working relationships and create a sustainable future for the next generation? Can they solve the Klamath Crisis and keep farms and fish alive? Will Pacificor be held accountable for their impacts on the river and basin economies? Many leaders in the community think so. Leaders from tribal, irrigation, and fishing communities are working hard to overcome differences and create sustainable economies for all.
There's been hard feelings for a lot of years, and it's been controversy and confrontation has been kind of the MO.
We realize that we need stability in the basin, and many of the values that the agriculture community have, hard-working values, family values, are the things, the same values that the tribes have in some aspects. And so we need stability, and to get stability, we need their support so we can arrive at long-term solutions. None of us are going to roll the other. Nobody's going to get their way. The only way to do it is work with them and work with others and solve things.
I think the greatest thing about this relicensing is that it's brought us to the table when we're talking. And our relationships and our discussions that are going on with the tribes, that's a big thing.
In order to have healthy communities, we have to support each other. And we have to support this land, and we have to support this water and these fish. And we take care of this water, and we take care of these fish, and they'll take care of us.
There may be some kind of silver lining in all this, because it certainly made fishermen up and down the coast sensitive to what's happened to Klamath and willing to rally to try and restore that fishery. So we really see this great alliance right now with the tribes, the people on the river who depend on the stocks, having a large contingency of people from the coast, from Santa Barbara to Astoria, all concerned about trying to fix the Klamath River.
We all live in this basin. There's water activities and farming in a lot of our sub-basins, and including the upper basin. And the first point is to say, you know what, we're going to be here, all going to be here.
There really, I think, for the first time, maybe ever, there's a genuine trust developing between the upper basin irrigators and the tribes, and including the Klamath tribes up here. And that, to me, is the key. So my vision is that agriculture stays whole up here, and that it's economically viable, that kids are coming back to the family farm to be the next generation, that we don't have to worry about water. The other part of that is I don't want the tribes to have to worry about fish either. I want them to have fish. I want them to be out there catching fish. I want their culture to remain intact. And I do think that's what they want for us as well.
If you choose to leave those dams in the river, you're just putting a final nail in the coffin in the economy of this whole Klamath Basin. You're going to ruin this Klamath Basin, because ultimately you'll kill this river. You'll kill the fish. And I remember what the Creator said. If you make those fish go away, then the people are going to go away. And that's not just the Indians either.
Tell me how we gonna take down the Iron Gate. Tell me how we gonna take down the Iron Gate Dam. Tell me how we gonna take down the Iron Gate and let that river run through. Tell me how we gonna take down the Iron Gate. Tell me how we gonna take down the Iron Gate Dam. Tell me how we gonna take down the Iron Gate and let those fish run through. We're talking steelhead and salmon, swimming up and down the Klamath River basin. Winter, spring, summer, fall, all year round. They'll be swimming up the river, they'll be swimming on down. They'll be swimming up the river, they'll be swimming on down. But first, we gotta take out the Iron Gate. Yeah, first we gotta take down the Iron Gate Dam. Yeah, first we gotta take down the Iron Gate and let those fish run through. We gotta look at the impacts, look at the cost, do something quick before the fish get lost. Fix up the wetlands, water quality. It's good for the river, it's good for the land, it's good for the people. Now let me hear you say, yeah. Now we're gonna take down the Iron Gate. Yeah, yeah. Now we're gonna take down the Iron Gate Dam. Well, now we're gonna take down the Iron Gate. Copco 1, Copco 2,